look, I'm a comic book, a cereal, I did a Christmas album, and a so-so popsicle. But this isn't about me. Not anymore.
Let's talk about some Easter eggs because this movie has
There's so many.
So many. I think my favorite Easter egg of all of them was a billboard in Times Square that says "Hi, hello,"
Yes.
and it's a reference to the Nick Kroll and John Mulaney.
Right. I didn't even get that one. I had to ask you what it was.
Yeah, it's like their fake public broadcast program from Kroll Show, a Comedy Central comedy that they then turned into a Broadway show that you can watch on Netflix.
Yeah.
And then I saw live. Two of my favorite comedians, John Mulaney obviously plays Spider-Ham.
Yes.
And they jammed that Kroll Show reference in there. And I could not be more happy about that one.
There was maybe my favorite one, and this is one that I actually knew was coming because I saw it at New York Comic Con. The opening credits of the movie does like the whole, like, oh, Sony Pictures, blah, blah, blah. Like all the logos are glitching out. It's very cool. And then it zooms in on a giant approved by the Comics Code Authority logo. And
it's
I
the one that's not
love it.
glitching.
No, it's
That
the
one
only
is
one
just
that's not glitching.
bam.
It's literally just like a, here you go, here's your comic book. Like,
so can you tell me what is like the origin of that stamp, which is familiar to me, but I don't know the story.
Right, so the Comics Code Authority is kind of the infamous purity campaign that was launched.
That sounds terrible.
Yes, it is. It was in the 1950s. There was a moral panic about comics, and not just superhero comics, all comics. Where this guy named Frederick Wortham wrote this paper that was very dubiously researched. That it was basically insinuated that comics, like rock and roll, are corrupting the youth.
The violent video games.
Exactly, 100% that. Cool. And so it launched this sort of, scary panic where people were burning comics, and there was all this concern that it was going to influence kids to be criminals. It was going to influence homosexuality and kids. All sorts of just, over the top ridiculousness. And so to kind of combat that and to save the industry, comics came together and were like, okay, we have to figure out some way that we can rate and say that there is some sort of censoring or content,
So
curating.
they started self-policing?
Exactly. It was a self-policing agency that had a code of conduct that was like, you can't show sex, you can't show violence,
Jesus.
You have to, there was absurd regulation.
So a more up version of the ESRB.
Exactly.
So what does it mean? What does it mean now? Is it just
means
a shared thing? Like comics fans all know this?
Yes, exactly. It's sort of like a meme in comics history, for comics history nerds. What it means. The code itself would change dramatically over the years. And it's eventually by the 80s, sex and violence and whatever, which is fair game and it's fine. But the comics code itself is the sort of relic of the things that superhero comics, I guess now, or any comics, can survive and make through and, handle as an industry.
So what does it mean for the symbol to be so prominently, it's not an Easter egg.
Right, it's just...
Per se, it is prominently displayed before the movie starts. What does that mean?
To me, it means that this movie knows its roots. It knows exactly where it came from. It knows what it's pulling from. It knows the weight of what it's doing. It knows the references that it's making and the history it's got kind of imparted in it by being so comic booky. And I think that that's so cool. You don't really see that level of earnestness in pop culture.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
I like it too. So there were also just so many call outs to creators in this movie, which was so charming.
I noticed when he's looking at his phone, he has a contact called B. Bendis.
Yes, which he's one of the Brian Michael Bendis, one of the co-creators, along with Sarah Pichelli, who made Miles Morales. There is a ramen shop called Romita Ramen, which John Romita and John Romita Jr. are both very, very, very famous comics artists.
Is there a Ditko anywhere?
I didn't notice one, but I would be shocked if there wasn't.
There must be a Ditko
There
somewhere.
must be.
So if you've seen the movie...
Wasn't there Ditko Movers or something? I don't even remember.
I don't remember. If you've seen the movie, tell us in the comments how stupid we are for missing the what I'm sure is a very obvious Ditko reference somewhere.
But there is the requisite Stanley cameo in this movie, which is all the more heartbreaking now, but it's maybe the most perfect Stanley cameo that has ever been.
Some of them are just played, especially in the MCU lately, some of them have just been played as
a gag,
jokes,
yeah.
And
This one is perfect.
Yeah, and they couldn't have planned it this way.
No,
obviously.
there's absolutely no way it could have been planned this perfectly, but it's Miles after the whole thing with Peter goes down. There's this really powerful scene of like basically New York in mourning, that they've lost Spider-Man, and it's really sad. And so Miles is like panicking and like, what am I gonna do? I have to now be Spider-Man. We don't have Spider-Man anymore. He goes to a costume shop and buys himself a Spider-Man costume. And the man,
like a really crappy Spider-Man costume.
Like a very bad Spider-Man costume.
He leaves the tag on.
He, goes to the counter, and the person selling the costume is Stan Lee, and he owns this costume shop. And he has this beautiful exchange with Miles about like, oh, he was my friend, and like it's very cute and touching.
And, Miles says,
can I return it?
If it doesn't fit.
And he says, oh, kid, it always fits.
It always fits eventually, yeah. And it's like super heartfelt. And then it zooms out a little bit and you see the sign that says no returns.
Yeah, no returns, no refunds.
And then there's a little sparkle, there's a little twinkle, like a little wink.
It's it's like the perfect encapsulation of like the duality of Stan. And it's great. It's so funny and so good. It's probably my favorite Stan Lee cameo, I think, in like the MCU as a whole. Yeah. Like it's just perfect.
Let's talk about go back a little bit to the intro when the Peter Parker who dies from Miles' universe is still alive at the beginning of the movie. The movie opens from his perspective. He's giving his backstory, and his version of it is like it's like the neutral Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's like the default.
He's like the vanilla Spider-Man. But a couple of the things that he references as he's giving his story, I radioactive spider, you all know the story. Now I save New York all the time.
Right.
I fight bad guys. This happens. He's
I had a mediocre popsicle. I did a Christmas album.
The mediocre popsicle is like one of the, like, we all bought a Spider-Man popsicle as a kid, and then we're disappointed when we took the wrapper off and it was half melted and the eyes were crooked. And it was garbage.
It was perfect.
It's just a picture of one
It's literally like someone took a picture on their phone of their shitty Spider-Man popsicle. It's really good. It's very good.
But then the best thing I think from that montage is when he goes, and this happened, we didn't really talk about it, and he's doing the fucking dance from Spider-Man 3.
Oh my God.
Hey. And it's like the worst, and everyone in the theater just goes, ugh.
It's so funny.
There's a reason we don't talk about that, but it's very funny.
Yes. It's also, that Spider-Man was voiced by Chris Pine, correct?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. There's a couple of weird voice choices.
Yeah.
Almost as weird as Julie Andrews as the Kraken in Aquaman.
Spoiler.
That's not a spoiler. That was announced. Warner Brothers announced that.
Oh, whatever.
For some reason. The weirdest thing I've ever seen, but that's fodder for another video.
Yes.
In this one we have, as you said, Chris Pine.
Yes.
As.
Well, I didn't catch that at all.
Yeah.
He's not
you
like.
Would never expect it.
No.
Why?
Chris Pine just shows up.
Why is that
he's
Chris
great.
Pine?
He's very good too.
Yeah, he's good. And then the final post-credits scene is. Which we can talk about.
Yeah, it's Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah.
For virtually no reason. Like, it's just the most random, like, also, here's this. But Miguel is voiced by Oscar Isaac, which I didn't catch.
According to the credits.
Yeah. He just, apparently they called up Oscar Isaac and were like, you want to voice a Spider-Man? And he was like, hell yeah, let's do it.
And he signed the contract, and then they told him he's going to be in it
the
for
post-credits,
10 seconds,
yeah.
And have the goofiest scene. Remind me how that plays out. It's like he's been watching the multiverse stuff from the future.
He's obviously in the future. He's been designing maybe like a collider of his own. I don't necessarily remember.
But it's like a watch or
it's like a
wearable techno. We all know the future is wearable technology.
Right, exactly. So he is able to jump universes now. Like he's able to jump Earths. And the first Earth that he wants to go to, for whatever reason, is Earth. It's Earth 66.
She goes, "Where are we going?" He goes, "To the beginning." And it literally goes back to the beginning, and it is the meme of the two Spider-Men
it's that
pointing at each other.
Stupid 60s Spider-Man cartoon that everyone turns into memes. It's the pointing at each other meme. It's the origin of that stupid, of Peter sitting at the desk with the photo behind him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's
cartoon.
all of the Spider memes.
I want to put on the record that we had pitched to Sony when doing the interviews and everything for this movie that we could get Shamik and Jake into our studio here and recreate the Spider-Man pointing at each other meme. I thought it was a great idea. They immediately
were like, no.
Yeah, and now we know why. It's because they already did it officially, because that entire post-credit scene, after it's like this very serious introduction of Miguel in Spider-Man 99, he just goes back to that cartoon and that animation style and tries to stop that Spider-Man who has this weird like chipmunk face thing going on.
That's just the animation. That's just how it looks.
So weird.
It's very bad.
And they just wind up pointing, hey, you pointed at me. No, you pointed, stop pointing at me. And it just does it for like a weirdly long time.
It lasts way longer than you think it should, which almost makes it funnier. It feels like a Tim and Eric bit.
Yeah, and Jonah Jameson is there,
yes,
right? With
I don't know
the guy with the Hitler stash.
Yes,
it's just
I don't know who voices him in that scene, but like, I wouldn't be surprised if it was like some big star. But no, it's so weird and so funny and so non sequitur. Like there's literally no reason they needed to bring Miguel in. There's no reason that 2099 needed to be a call out. Like they just did it because they wanted to.
Because they can.
Yeah.
And I appreciated it.
I did too.
It was great.
Shocked. It also reminded me how dumb that suit is. It's a bad suit, sorry.
The 2099
Yes,
suit.
it's ugly.
Well, speaking of the suits, that was another Easter egg when they go down into the Spider Cave.
Yeah, Spider Cave, which is a call out to the Ultimate cartoon. That is, Peter has a spider cave.
There's a lot of vehicles down there.
There's Spider Buggy is there.
Was there like a helicopter or something?
I don't remember, but I
wouldn't
be surprised.
It was hard to catch. There's a lot of stuff in the dark. But there were like 13 spider suits, and I was like, it was like such a quick, it was a flash scene.
So quick.
I was like, oh shit, I'm not gonna be able to write all these down.
I didn't even try. Like I noticed there's the velocity suit from PS4 Spider-Man.
Yes, yeah.
Is like very prominently displayed.
Yeah. And that's fun because that's like a very recent thing.
Yes. You know? It's so jam-packed. There's a spider suit with a cape.
Which I saw it and I was like, is that Doctor Strange's cape?
Right, and it might be. I didn't catch it. Like, I mean, I obviously caught the cape, but I didn't catch enough detail in it.
It looked like it, but either way,
it could be.
Spider-Man has worn a cape.
Yes, in the Ultimate Comics, or not the Ultimate Comics, in the Ultimate cartoon, there is a moment, if I'm recalling correctly, there is a moment where he has to wear Doctor Strange's cape. So I think
it's a reference to something.
It is a possibility that it is a reference to Strange's cape, which would be very cute. But it's also a running gag because Miles wants to wear a cape with his Spider-Man costume, and it's very cute.
Peter, who at that point is in sweatpants, goes, no cape.
Does not kiboshes Miles' cape, and then Miles gets a little bit of a victory lap when he sees the cape, and he's like, haha, capes.
There's gonna be a lot to unpack in that scene. Like we could go back.
I need to get like a good screenshot to go through and see what. I think anyone who's played PS4 Spider-Man is going to see a lot of very familiar costume choices in that specific scene.
I think every single one of those suits must be from something.
Oh no, they absolutely are. It's just there's so many of them, and they go by so quickly that there's nothing that they pulled, just kind of like out of their ass for it. Like they're all references to something.
So cool.
Yeah. So there are a couple. For as comic booky as this movie is, it doesn't actually make a ton of like direct references to the comics, which is kind of nice because it doesn't actually expect you to have read the comics to go into it. There are whole big scenes of like the covers, which are the actual covers of the comics.
He's reading the comics at one point when he's trying to figure out how to stop sticking to stuff.
Yes.
Those were, I assumed those were actual panels.
I don't know. Those comics were like, stop sticking. No, like those were.
Really?
Yeah, those, not that I know of. But the covers, like of Spider-Gwen and Miles and everything, those are actual covers.
I recognize the Spider-Gwen cover.
Yes. But there are also kind of like nice little subtle references to the Ultimate comic, specifically Miles' roommate is never named, but it's Gangy. He learns that Miles is a Spider-Man in kind of the most ridiculous way possible, with all of the Spider-Man kind of in the mix.
And he just faints.
Oh, and he just faints, and it's very funny. But there's, like at the very end of the movie, Miles has kind of a moment where he talks about how he and his roommate have become friends, which if you're a fan of the Ultimate Comics, you know that Gangy and Miles are best friends, and that's a whole relationship that carries out through that, through those stories.
And as I learned from you right before we shot this, Gangy is the character who they took a lot of elements from for Ned in Spider-Man Homecoming.
Ned in Homecoming, Ned's name is from a different Spider-Man character in Spider-Man comics. which is a whole thing. But Ned as a character in the MCU is basically just Gangy.
Cool.
So it gets a little confusing. But then there's also a moment where May gives Miles Peter's old web shooters, the Peter that died, because this is obviously the May that was the actual aunt of the Peter A. Parker, Chris Pine Peter Parker. And so she
Chris Pine Peter. I can't believe that's a phrase.
Weird. But so May gives him the web shooters, which is actually how Miles got his web shooters in the Ultimate Comics. He doesn't make his own. I think it's actually MJ, or maybe it's MJ and May together who kind of give him, or he inherits the web shooters from the two of them who are basically saying like, okay, you're ready now. Our Peter has died, and you're going to step into his place.
Which essentially is the same.
Yeah, it's exactly the same moment, kind of adapted for this movie, but it works.
I want to call out a little nod.
Yeah.
I appreciated a little character detail about Peter B. Parker.
Right.
And when he's explaining his origin story, it's a quick flash, but he's like, MJ and I got married, blah, blah, blah. And when he says that he and MJ got married, it's like a shot of him like smashing a glass on the floor. And I was like, oh, Peter B. Parker is Jewish.
Yeah,
that's cool.
It was very cool. It was actually like, that's part of the scene that they showed us at New York Comic Con, and a couple of my friends were like, wait a minute, is Peter Jewish in this? And I could not remember it. And then that happened, and I was like, perfect, that's so cute.
Cool, yeah.
It's just there's no real character details that come out of it, but it's just a very nice nod.
Yeah. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about is Spider-Ham when he leaves going, that's all, folks. And Miles going, can we do that?
Yeah.
Can we,
he goes, legally, can we do that?
Can we do that?
Yeah.
Can he say that?
It's so funny. And that's right before Spider-Ham gives Miles the hammer, and he's like, it'll fit in your pocket, kid.
Yeah, is it? It's the same scene.
Yeah, it's the same scene.
Very good. Very good. For all the Looney Tunes
there's your
buffs out there.
Looney Tunes nod that you knew was coming, that had to have come. Like, there's just no way. You can't do that without making at least one.